Alrighty, everyone. Good evening. This is meteorologist David Nazario in for my good friend Jonathan Kegges. He is away for the week, so you've got me at the helm for your 9:30 live weather show. I'm going to try to make it as conversational as possible, but I want to tell you right now, I've decided to load up on quite a bit of information, not only for us here in Central Florida, but my forte, if you will, my bread and butter, the tropics. We've had a lot go on for the month of August. Today is August 25th, 2025. The last few days of this month, however, are going to be much calmer than what we've seen since right at the very beginning. The first couple days of August, we kicked right off with the development of what would become Major Hurricane Erin, let alone our first Category 5 of the hurricane season. Lord willing, we're not looking at anything else like that in the near distant future, but I wish I could say that confidently. And to tell you the truth, I don't want to go jinxing us in any way, shape, or form. Right now, we're sitting pretty clear, but we're going to talk all about some of the signals that are headed our way. A beautiful evening to everybody tuning in over on YouTube. Thank you all for tuning in for our News 6 Plus as well. It's great to have you all with us. Melissa Riley, Kevin Hawthorne from Lakeland. We also have Kiara Henry. Good to see you as well. And Kimberly, yes, we have a lot of thunderstorms out there still, to tell you the truth. Let's get you right on over to the radar. If you notice, we still have a pretty active pattern. Now, much of our stuff in Central Florida has dissipated, but there's still quite a bit of lightning out there. It's leftover heat lightning, and I wish I could pull up one of the tower cams out of downtown Orlando. I don't think I have the capability of doing so here on the Lynx computer in the Digi room, but supposedly we've got some pretty spectacular lightning going on right over some of the high-rise buildings in downtown Orlando. So perhaps once I hit the road here in a moment, or if you're local to the area, poke your head outside, safely, and take a look and see what's going on. But you can see that westerly onshore flow continues. It's been very persistent, very stubborn, and it's all thanks, believe it or not, to the influence that Erin has had on our general large-scale pattern. And when I say large-scale, I'm talking over the United States, over eastern portions of Canada, much of the North Atlantic, and it's Erin primarily, on top of, other couple other mechanisms we watch for in the tropics that have actually helped to close their doors for the rest of August and perhaps the first couple days of September. I can't believe we're already talking September. Here's a look at your water vapor imagery, and the reason I bring this up is, believe it or not, on top of what Erin has done to the pattern, we're looking at a cold front now pretty much more stationary over the northern portions of the state. You can kind of see the big difference between the moist and the dry air south of Jacksonville, kind of lingering between the distance from Orlando to Jacksonville. We have a front that's hung up out there, an unseasonably strong cold front. And when I say strong, we're talking very strong. For the month of August, we're still technically in peak summertime, but if you look at the temperature anomaly over the United States, this is very impressive. It's almost as if Erin decided to induce a little bit of a sneak peek of what the fall and what the up-ahead spooky season could look like for a lot of us in the eastern and central United States. Florida, however, didn't quite get in on that action. We're just getting a lot of rain and good westerly onshore flow in terms of our moisture and wind off the Gulf. And as a result of that, if you look here at our rainfall totals, this is in the last 2 days, we've seen a lot of rain piling up in a short period of time thanks to these very fast-moving, heavier downpours that will work their way across the state within maybe a couple of hours. It's very unlike what we would typically see during our sea breeze activation in the afternoon. Sunshine to start the first half of the day, clouds beginning to build in between 1 and 3 o'clock, and then by 5, especially now that school is back in full swing, you hit the road, you hit the highway, and we're being dumped on. In this case, though, you can kind of see it's very interesting. This is a rainfall totals graphic, but you could almost make a case that you can very well see where the flow of the rainfall has been. It's been shooting from the west coast right across the state out off the east coast. And you can see some of our heavier accumulations more on western Florida, which is actually a big benefit, to tell you the truth, because that was the one lingering region of the Florida Peninsula that were still battling some of the leftover drought conditions that we had seen build up during the likes of April, May, and portions of June. You look at the rainfall totals for the last 5 days, and sheesh, I think we have fully eradicated whatever drought conditions we still had down there. I didn't quite pull it up tonight, the latest drought monitor, because we're going to get another update very soon. And for the sake of time, I wanted to rapidly just show you a little dose of what the healthy rainfall totals have looked like across our state over the last few days. So we talked rain, we talked westerly flow, we talked cold fronts, and then we're going to be talking tropics. So this is what you need to know for not only tonight's show, but this is kind of like an itinerary of the week ahead, what we'll be discussing together here at 9:30. The westerly flow is still going to dominate our local weather pattern. It does seem like models are in a fair bit of agreement that even tomorrow and possibly Wednesday, we might be starting the day on the soggy side. You know, to tell you the truth, being a natural morning person, I was kind of discouraged that as soon as I rolled out of bed today, it was already gloomy outside, already drizzling, sprinkling when I took out the trash and the recycle bins. I personally like to start the day, even if it gets hot. I want to see some sunshine, maybe a stray cloud or two for a nice sunrise. But no, it looks like tomorrow morning, once again, we're going to have those showers and storms rocketing from coast to coast in rapid fashion. Then we have another system coming in by about Thursday, Friday, just in time for the weekend to ramp our rain chances back up again. And then if you look at the third bullet point, one thing I really want to put a lot of emphasis on for you all this week is peak of the hurricane season is coming right up. It is hot on the trail of what we just had to endure for the month of August. So before we get into that, this is our 24-hour temperature change. Believe it or not, we saw a little bit of the less rain today. You saw some of that dry air on the water vapor. So what this chart is showing you is over the last 24 hours compared to where we sit right now versus yesterday, we're already starting to see it warming back up. Rain chances are going to slightly dissipate as we go between tomorrow and Thursday before that next little frontal feature can come through. The high temperatures, however, though, if you see where we bottomed out, or I should say topped out today, Palm Coast and Cocoa Beach, alongside Gainesville, way up to the northwest, were the only ones to really come in at 90 degrees. The rest of us were sitting pretty comfortably in the mid to upper 80s. The heat index right now outside, I know the sun's been down for about an hour or so. You can see the heat index in comparison to where we have been has also dramatically come down, which is always good news. Always good news, especially since we've been blistering for much of the summer. Final countdown to fall is on the way. I think we're about 25 days now from the calendar start of the fall season, which means things are going to be changing. The winds of change are definitely going to be in the air. Here's a look hour by hour tomorrow. I wish I had a little more for you, to tell you the truth, but honestly, the next couple days are just going to absolutely be generalized by that onshore component coming off the Gulf and sweeping towards our east coast. That's where your rain is going to track. And when I say these are fast-moving little clusters of rain, heavier pockets of thunderstorms, I definitely mean it. You can see tomorrow during the afternoon, we're really going to ramp our rain chances up for sure. And you can see when we switch over to the clouds and rain, we're going to finally kind of see more of that coverage dissipate some. But as soon as we start the day, notice this is 9, 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock. We're already starting to see that stuff moving through pretty much in the same general fashion we saw yesterday. Or I should say earlier today. It feels like yesterday already, to tell you the truth. And then we dissipate once we get just beyond sunset. That is the one thing that we have going for us. Rain is going to build up during the first, I'd say, half, maybe 2/3 of the day, and then we'll really dry out just in time for sunset, because we've had so much of the action happen during the first half of the day in comparison to when the sea breeze would be firing up during the second half of the day. And then if I show you here on the Euro, as that first front finally dissipates ever so slightly by Wednesday, notice we finally start to kick it up out of there. If you look to our northwest, we have another system that's going to be coming down that we'll have to watch for. And we'll talk a little bit more about that once we come back from our first scheduled break. Let me not take up too much of your time. Make sure you get comfortable, grab your favorite drink and your favorite snack, because after we come back, we're going to hit the tropics hard. So stick around, folks. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with you momentarily. All right, and we're back. Thanks to those of you who stuck around. We're going to try to get through this. I took up a little more time than I would have liked for the first block of the show, and there's a lot that I want to cover, but right off the rip, one thing I want to bring to your attention immediately is when you take a look at the tropical satellite out there, on the left-hand side of the screen, you could see that enormous extension of our cold front that's just draped right up against the east coast of the United States, all the way down into our neck of the woods, and then back through the central Gulf. That's what's keeping our rain chances so high. It's sitting right over top of us, and unfortunately, there's really not much back behind it to give it a little nudge. And that first initial nudge came from Aaron as it began to transition from a tropical system to non-tropical. That's what happens with these things. Take, for instance, you get those mid-latitude low pressures that you typically see during fall and winter. They bring a lot of the heavy snow, sometimes the freezing rain, the icing, and then down here we'll typically get a hefty dose of rainfall. If you were to take something like that and put it in the tropics for a while, it'll eventually evolve. Believe it or not, that is a thing. And then if you take tropical features and put them up into the northern regions of the globe, as they start to encounter the cooler, drier air, pick up some of the jet stream up there as well, they'll also make that transition. Now, working away from the United States, notice across the rest of the Atlantic, though, we're pretty quiet. Things have really calmed down. Here is Fernand. Decent tropical system. However, if you notice, it might be a little difficult for you all at home to see. It is starting to encounter some really strong westerly wind shear, so it's actually created a bit of discombobulation with this system. Our thunderstorms are now towards the south and east of the center, and the low itself is it's looking a little naked this evening, and it's going to start to weaken here, and I think we might end up seeing the last advisory for this puppy within the next day or two. I don't know if it makes it through Wednesday. We'll have to wait and see. But the rest of the Atlantic, notice we can't really buy a cloud, let alone a tropical wave anymore. The wave train that was out there for much of August has disappeared. And that's because we're now finally working into the more unfavorable phasing of the MJO. Let me show you that real quick. I'll go ahead and share my screen with you all. And this might be a little difficult for you to pick up on, but what's very interesting, two things. First off, we've worked into what are called the more unfavorable phases of our Madden-Julian oscillation. If you'd like a little bit of a crash course, I have an article that I just put out today on clickorlando.com with a direct link to a few different articles that not only myself but my wonderful teammates have put out breaking down what the MJO is. It essentially is a pulse of rising motions that moves across the tropics around the globe every month or two. And what that does is it just essentially stimulates the atmosphere and gives it that fateful nudge I love to say over on my social media when I'm talking tropics. It creates more lift. Where there's more lift, there's more thunderstorms. And where there's more thunderstorms, you get more systems, more tropical systems. So right now we're rocking into phases 4, 5, and 6, which will usually create higher pressure and sinking motions over the Atlantic, which is why everything's clear out there right now. But if you look closely, those little yellow lines there, again, they might be difficult for you to see. They look like little strands of spaghetti that fan out around this graphic. As we come back around over the next 15 days, we're going to see another pulse of the MJO and a couple other different weak features that propagate or move away from the MJO come across the Atlantic. And it looks even more favorable when you switch over to this. This is going to be a diagram that essentially, when you look at it from the top down, you're going forward in time. Highest on the left-hand side, that's where we are now. And as you go down the graphic, you get further out in time. The shades of orange means sinking. Not a whole lot's going to happen. Where you see the teals and the greens, that's lift. And for what we're seeing here, not only does it look like right after the first couple days of September, a lot of our long-range computer models are actually continuing to show even more of an MJO passage across the Atlantic. So not only are they showing it, but they're showing it getting stronger as it does so as we get closer in time. So I'll take us back to our actual link system. And we'll go ahead and start wrapping up this portion of the segment with a quick glance at Fernand. Our 5 o'clock advisor. We're going to be getting another one in about an hour and a half. Still at a 60-mile-an-hour tropical storm. Central pressure at 1,000 millibars, although I do believe it has come up per National Hurricane Center. I think we've risen to now 1,002 or 1,003 millibars. So that filling, that weakening has already started to take place. And you can see over the projected window of movement, Wednesday, I don't think this thing's going to be with us anymore. I think Wednesday, I'm alongside National Hurricane Center. We're probably not going to have our F-named storm out there. Next one on the list would be Gabrielle, and it doesn't look like we'll have to wait too long for that system to come out. I also wanted to show you this. Take a look at that enormous cold tongue between Bermuda and the eastern, southeastern United States. Very impressive, the upwelling from Hurricane Aaron. Believe it or not, that is actually going to help create a bit more favorability in the Atlantic. I'll talk about that after our next scheduled break. I just want to show you this real fast. I'm not going to show you any of the fancy computer models. I just want to show you the probabilities. It's my favorite color-coded chart that helps us get a first glance of where it is we need to be looking when it comes time for the tropics to light back up. And you can see we're pretty dead out there as we stand. But if you quickly fast forward out into portions of the weekend and into next week, as early as next week, you're already starting to see signals increasing not only across the actual main development region out off the coast of Africa, but then over yonder closer to home too. It kind of looks like we're going to be in for a little bit of a double-edged sword. The Central American gyre may make a return, which I also have an article over on clickorlando.com breaking that down. And we might have some tropical wave trains out there, once again, coming off the coast of Africa and trying to get going. Still too far out to kind of make a first glance or kind of make a first estimate of where they're going to go, but they're coming. And I don't think we're going to have to wait too long after September 1st before we get another famous area of interest, one of those yellow blips on National Hurricane Center's chart. Wow, so I know that was a fire hose of information. I hope you've got your questions ready. I'm going to reserve some time after the next break to get all the answers that you have for your questions. So drop them in the chat, please. Let me know what you got, and we'll be right back one more time. I'll see you in a second. All right, and here we go. Getting ready for the fateful outro of your Monday night 9:30 News 6 Weather Live. So we've got a couple really good questions in the chat right now. Andy over on the YouTube channel says MJO looks favorable mid-September. Big time, I would say. So again, the Madden-Julian oscillation is an oscillation, meaning that it goes back and forth on a repetitive cycle. And what it does is it basically increases how much lift, how much oomph the atmosphere packs. It can also hurt it to an extent of, like, right now, we're in the unfavorable phasing of it. So while down the range over the Indian Ocean, the maritime continents, China, Thailand, Indonesia, all that, they're seeing that rising action, but what goes up has to come back down. And so in response to all that, we get sinking here over the Atlantic. And that's why we're going to be quiet at least for another 7 or so days. I think as early as September 1st, 2nd, we may even start having more trackable signals, to tell you the truth. And then we also have Rebecca Edwards asks, will we see more of a pattern this year of a hurricane making landfall on the East Coast? So that is an excellent question. I think in comparison to previous hurricane seasons, 21, 22, 23, even last year's 2024, this year seems to favor a bit more of those east, or I should say west-northwest versus generally westerly tracks. And I think as we rock through September and October together, we'll have to continue to watch for some of the tropical waves coming off of Africa, but the ones that do get going quickly, shortly into their time spent over the main development region, the area of ocean between the Lesser Antilles of the Caribbean and the immediate beaches of West Africa, those are the ones that are probably going to gain latitude like Aaron did and then either quickly eject up and out or maybe make a run for the mid-Atlantic, the Northeast, or the Nova Scotia, Atlantic Canada area of Canada. And Jonathan and I did a fairly spectacular job highlighting that preseason. I remember I started working on some preseasonal forecasts myself back in January and February to include the types of storms we would see during certain months of the hurricane season, and we've been doing pretty solid, to tell you the truth. And then Melissa Riley asks, David, is it true that we don't get any hurricanes until October and November? So to tell you the truth, Melissa, it's very difficult to pinpoint that. Would I say that we don't get any? No, I would not be that confident to say we won't get any. Have recent years favored more September and October action? A little bit. If you recall, in 2023, Idalia actually hit us this time in August. I mean, we didn't have anything for September, October, and November. Last year, we had Debbie at the very beginning of August, and then we had Helene end of September, and then Milton first 2 weeks of October. So truthfully, it's a very case-by-case sort of thing. You have to see where it is these tropical features try to develop themselves or establish themselves, and then you have to zoom out a little bit and look at the large-scale pattern to kind of make that determination. And I do think, especially in September, and then obviously October for sure, that's what my gut is telling me, but September, once that gyre comes back over Central America that can possibly slingshot some storms out in different directions, that's when I think the Gulf and especially Florida will have to keep their eyes open. And then naturally, if there's any long-range signal from off the coast of Africa that may try to make a run westward, you'll know about it from us here at News 6, especially me first. I'm not afraid to take some swings for the fence and tell you about something that's 7, 10, 14 days away. And yes, exactly, Kimberly, yes. So the longer they stay in the MDR, not necessarily stay, but the quicker they organize further east, the greater likelihood they'll find a little weakness in the pattern and be able to meander more north than westward. That's why last year we did see a lot more landfalls because it took a little bit of time for those waves in the Atlantic to move into the Caribbean, get closer to the United States, and then especially the Gulf. Then they took off. And by then, you're landlocked. So somebody is going to be hit by something like that. That's what we have to watch for sure. So Kimberly Couch, I have an article over on clickorlando.com, the Central American Gyre. Just search that up on Google or on News 6, and it'll definitely pop up. Basically, what it is, before we wrap up, I have about like 30 seconds. Central American Gyre. You have your general winds that flow over portions of the southern United States, Mexico, and then they flow in a different direction over Central America and the northern portions of South America. And usually when the MJO comes through and creates a bunch of lift in that area, it ruins that original or that average wind pattern out there and creates a huge area of spin. And that's why it's called a gyre. It's just this large, slow-moving spin of moisture and lift. And sometimes little waves and little pieces of vorticity spin in the atmosphere can get stuck in that large spin and then be spat out as tropical systems. That's your very, very quick crash course. I promise we'll talk more about that as the week goes on, especially as we get closer to the last couple days of August and we get some new data to kind of decipher together here at News 6. We'll talk all about it. But all right, I got to go ahead and cut the stream before our 10 o'clock show. It's been an outstanding time with you all tonight. Thanks for having such a great conversation with me. We'll see you again, same time, same place at 9:30 tomorrow. And if you've caught me on other social media platforms, you know the phrase. I'll say, this is the Digital Weather Center signing out.